Three white Shelby Mustangs stood beneath the auction lights, each polished to the same hard shine, each wearing blue racing stripes, and each carrying enough paperwork to make a collector reach for a wire transfer. Daniel Dalton walked past all three without reading a VIN. "Mr. Dalton," Victoria Hale called from the center of the auction floor, "the numbers are on the inner fenders." Daniel ignored them. He crouched behind car 1 and studied the seam sealer around the rear wheelhouse, then car 2, then car 3, the one with the ugliest gray smear beneath its trunk mat and a crooked section of old harness tape. He stopped there. "Only one of these bodies was put together the way Shelby's shop actually worked," he said. Victoria folded her arms. "And you discovered that by choosing the messiest car? I'm not telling you which car has the best paperwork. I'm telling you which one was assembled like a race shop was running out of time." He lifted a loose rubber body plug from a factory access hole and slid in a 6mm borescope. The image appeared on a 40-inch inspection monitor. Inside the closed quarter cavity of car 3, red-brown primer disappeared beneath white overspray. Blue paint dust crossed the white at a shallow angle. Oxidation grew through all three layers from the edge of a buried spot weld. Daniel moved the scope to car 2. Beneath its perfect exterior, the sequence was reversed. Gray epoxy primer, artificially tinted brown coating, white paint placed over both. The old-looking surface had been created before the body color, not by decades after it. The buyer who had placed a $60,000 deposit on car 2 took one step toward the screen. Victoria Hale did not. She looked at the clock above the auction stage. 5 hours remained before her company would offer the three cars to the world. "That is one camera angle and one man's interpretation," she said. "Check the VINs, confirm the catalog, and I will pay your $750 inspection fee. Turn this into a public authenticity dispute, and Dalton Motor Works is finished with Monarch Reserve Auctions." Daniel kept the borescope inside the dark cavity. "Then you hired the wrong single dad," he said, "because I won't sell 3 answers when the metal only gives me 1. The invitation had arrived at Daniel's garage 4 days earlier in a black envelope thick enough to feel expensive. Monarch Reserve Auctions was staging its largest American performance sale in a converted aircraft assembly hall outside Charlotte. The centerpiece was called the Shelby Triangle, 3 privately owned 1966 GT350S, all Wimbledon white with blue stripes, all carrying period-style high-performance parts, and all cataloged as authentic Shelby-built cars. All 3 were represented as later production examples from the period when the under-ride traction bar arrangement was used, which meant their suspension work could be compared against the same claimed configuration instead of 3 different production phases. That alone was unusual. Finding 3 examples within one regional auction was rare enough to fill hotel rooms. Finding 3 whose histories all became uncertain during overlapping years was the kind of coincidence that made careful buyers nervous and optimistic sellers talk faster. Victoria did not initially ask Daniel to decide which car was real. Monarch had already published its preliminary conclusion that all 3 were authentic, with different levels of restoration. She asked him to perform a final mechanical condition check because a respected collector named Owen Pritchard had placed a refundable deposit on car 2, provided the car passed before the live sale. Daniel had inspected ordinary muscle cars for Monarch for 6 years. The work represented almost half of Dalton Motor Works' annual revenue. It paid 2 mechanics during slow winters and helped Daniel keep the small brick shop his father had once leased by the month. It also let his 19-year-old daughter, Nora, study automotive design at community college without borrowing every dollar. But Monarch rarely called him for cars whose value depended more on history than compression. "They have 2 provenance specialists," Nora said when she read the invitation. "Why do they need you?" "Because paper doesn't tell them whether the second gear synchronizer is gone." "And if the paper is wrong?" Daniel looked across the garage at a 1969 fastback, whose restored rear quarter had cracked along a hidden line of filler. "Then the metal gets a vote." Nora had grown up with that answer. Her mother lived in Arizona and called every Sunday, but most of Nora's childhood happened in the 2 rooms above Dalton Motor Works. Daniel packed school lunches beside the parts washer. Nora learned multiplication by counting ring gear teeth and later learned skepticism by watching beautiful paint hide ugly repairs. She came to the auction as Daniel's recorder, not his assistant authenticator. Daniel made that distinction clear. She could photograph, label, and log. She could ask any question. She would not be asked to decide what 3 owners, Two experts, a CEO, and a room of buyers had failed to decide themselves. The aircraft hall looked less like a garage than a bank designed around chrome. Black curtains divided the lots. White light panels floated above the cars. A stage crew rehearsed camera moves while detailers removed fingerprints nobody else could see. Car 1 stood on the left. Its panel gaps were narrow, its engine bay was clinically clean, and its underside had been finished to match a restoration guide down to colored inspection daubs. Its owner, a retired developer named Martin Greer, had bought it 12 years earlier from a dealer who called it an older Concours restoration. Car 2 stood in the center and carried the strongest documentation. It had an old title, copies of invoices, part numbers that matched the model year, and a thick binder assembled by its consignor. Its original-style steering wheel showed light wear at 10 and 2. Its aluminum intake and cast components carried convincing dates. Owen Pritchard's deposit rested on this car. Car 3 stood on the right. It looked excellent from 10 feet and untidy from underneath. The seam sealer was irregular. Some blue overspray reached areas a careful restorer would have masked. The rear harness crossed one bracket at a slight angle. Its title contained one wrong digit that had followed the car through at least 3 transfers. Monarch's catalog called the discrepancy a clerical concern, but its specialists had ranked Car 3 lowest of the group. Victoria Hale met Daniel beside the stage. She was 41, controlled, and known for moving an auction from rumor to record price without raising her voice. She had built Monarch Reserve after inheriting a regional estate sale business and realizing wealthy collectors wanted certainty more than spectacle. Her company offered guaranteed minimums to selected consignors. If a car failed to sell above that number, Monarch absorbed part of the difference. The 3 Shelbys carried guarantees totaling more than $900,000. Victoria had not built either tribute car. She had not forged a title. Her mistake was more ordinary and, to Daniel, more dangerous. She had trusted 2 impressive reports because the sale needed them to be true. "Your scope is mechanical," she told him. "Cold start, leak check, charging, transmission, brakes, steering, 90 minutes per car. Do not remove identity-bearing parts. Do not disturb VIN stamps, body tags, or original fasteners. Can I use existing body openings? For condition, not archaeology. Condition includes what the body is made of." Victoria gave him a level look. "Authenticity has already been reviewed by Adrian Cole and Lawrence Whitaker. They have 40 years of combined Shelby experience. Then my inspection won't bother them." It bothered them within 12 minutes. Adrian Cole represented Martin Greer, the owner of Car 1. He wore a navy blazer and soft cotton gloves and spoke about factory practice as though he had personally stood beside every worker in Los Angeles. Lawrence Whitaker had been hired by Owen Pritchard to protect the deposit on Car 2. Unlike Cole, Whitaker did not talk down to Daniel. He simply regarded mechanical inspection as a lower form of knowledge. Daniel began without starting an engine. He placed 3 magnetic boards behind the cars and labeled them 1, 2, and 3. Beneath each number, Nora created 4 columns: assembly, time, geometry, and records. "No conclusions in the headings," Daniel said. "Only observations." He first examined the rear harness routing. All 3 cars used the correct style of cloth wrapping and period-looking connectors. Car 1 and Car 2 also shared an odd detail. A retaining clip near the left wheelhouse was installed with its folded edge facing inward. The clip fit and held the harness. It was simply rotated from the way the factory stamping guided the wire. On Car 3, the clip faced outward, and the harness took a less graceful path around a seam. Cole smiled. "So the neat routing is evidence against the cars?" "Not alone. Then it is not evidence. It is an observation that becomes evidence if something else explains it." Daniel moved to the trunk seam. Car 1 and Car 2 had nearly identical sealer beads, each with 3 evenly spaced tool marks at the corner. The beads were so similar that Nora overlaid photographs on her tablet. The tool marks aligned within a 1/4 inch. Car 3's sealer looked as if it had been pressed with a gloved thumb and dragged by a worker who wanted the car off his station. It varied in width. At one point it climbed over the edge of a bracket instead of running around it. Whitaker said a modern restorer could reproduce messiness. "Yes," Daniel replied, "which is why messiness is not proof either. But 2 cars repeating the same neat mistake suggests they were restored from the same instruction, template, or reference car." Nora wrote identical clip orientation under cars 1 and 2, same 3 tool marks. Under Car 3, she wrote, Irregular application. Daniel then mapped the spot welds around non-identity-bearing sections of the rear wheelhouses using a bright grazing light and a small ultrasonic thickness probe. He did not scrape paint. He did not drill. He marked each detected nugget on removable transparent film. Cars 1 and 2 showed the same sequence. 6 evenly spaced welds ran forward, a gap appeared beneath the bracket, and 4 more continued behind it. It looked excellent. Car 3 showed 5 welds, then a doubled strike, then 3 irregularly spaced welds. One spot had been missed and caught from the opposite direction. Ugly, strong enough, and consistent with a low-volume conversion, performed after the base body left Ford's main line. Shelby did not build these bodies from raw sheet metal, Daniel said. Ford built the Mustangs. Shelby's crew modified finished cars. Their added work crossed factory work. The sequence matters more than whether the final row pleases a judge. Cole pointed to the restoration photographs for Car 1. Every weld was duplicated from surviving examples. Duplicated all at once on a stripped shell, Daniel said. That is not the same sequence as Ford first and Shelby later. Victoria appeared behind them. She had been approving camera positions and answering consignor questions. Now she saw buyers gathering near the magnetic boards. Move the boards behind the curtain, she said. People are looking at the cars, Daniel replied. People are reading unverified notes beside lots we are offering tonight. Then give me a private bay. All service bays are occupied. Daniel began removing his transparent weld maps. Then pause the catalog claims until the inspection is complete. Victoria's expression cooled. The catalog is complete. Your task is not to reopen it. Owen Pritchard approached Car 2. He was 68 and had spent 40 years building a chain of farm equipment dealerships. He understood the difference between paint and steel, even if he did not know Shelby production. My deposit says satisfactory inspection, he said. I would like to know what he finds. Victoria could not dismiss him. She ordered a black curtain moved around the 3 cars and limited access to owners, experts, buyer, and staff. Inside the improvised bay, Daniel performed the mechanical checks he had been hired to do. All 3 engines started. Car 1 idled with a sharp mechanical rhythm and clean oil pressure. Car 2 took 2 revolutions, then settled. Car 3 stumbled until Daniel corrected an over-rich choke setting. None of those results established identity. A Tribute could run beautifully. A real car could need a carburetor adjustment. He tested charging voltage, coolant behavior, clutch engagement, steering play, and brake balance on low-profile wheel rollers. Car 1 had the best mechanical condition. Car 2 had a slight second-gear balk when cold. Car 3 showed more steering box play than Daniel would accept for road use. Cole seized on every result. The supposedly real one drives worst. Authenticity and condition are different questions, Daniel said. A real car can be worn. A Tribute can be built yesterday. He placed a red service tag on Car 3 for steering adjustment. Then he continued the authenticity inspection. He would not improve his argument by hiding a fault in the car he currently favored. At the quarter access holes, the borescope produced the first image that changed the room. Car 1's cavity showed modern gray epoxy beneath the white body color. Brown toning lay between them in irregular clouds, apparently intended to suggest age. Yet the brown stopped cleanly at the edges of several modern plug welds. Car 2 was more convincing. It contained a genuine old inner bracket with period oxidation and the correct stamped shape, but the bracket had been welded into a body protected by modern epoxy. Around it, the heat-affected zone cut through the artificial patina. The old part was real. The body sequence was not. Car 3 showed a completely different history. Primer coated the closed cavity first. White overspray entered later through body openings. Blue striped dust appeared only where the spray angle could reach. The edge oxidation began at exposed weld boundaries and traveled beneath the later layers in branching lines. Dust had settled into the deepest seam and been trapped by an old wax treatment applied years afterward. Daniel froze the image. You can copy a color, he said. You can buy an old bracket. What is hard to copy is 40 different moments happening in the right order inside a place nobody expected to see. Whitaker leaned close to the screen. Paint sequence varies during restoration. Car 3 may simply retain more original sheet metal. That does not prove Shelby converted it. Correct, Daniel said. The expert had expected resistance, not agreement. Daniel pointed to Nora's board. Layer history tells us Car 3 is older in the hidden structure. It does not tell us who modified it. We need the geometry and the work sequence to agree. Victoria looked at the clock. 4 hours remained. How long? As long as 3 honest inspections take. That answer can cost this company hundreds of thousands of dollars. Selling the wrong answer can cost your buyers more. Victoria drew Daniel aside. Her voice remained controlled, but the pressure was no longer subtle. Monarch has guaranteed these consignments. We published 2 independent opinions. Owen's deposit is tied to car 2. If you call that car a tribute based on seam sealer and camera shadows, you will damage 3 owners, 2 experts, and this auction. Then let the next test prove me wrong. I can end your access now. You can. And your inspection agreement. All of it. Daniel knew exactly what that meant. The next month's Monarch work included 7 condition reports, 2 recommissioning jobs, and storage preparation for an estate collection. Losing it would not close Dalton Motor Works that afternoon. It would force him to lay off one of the 2 mechanics before winter. Nora's next tuition payment would come from a line of credit already carrying too much. He looked through the curtain at his daughter. She was carefully labeling borescope images without listening for the answer he might give. She had learned long ago that financial pressure became most dangerous when people pretended it did not exist. If you end my contract because I refuse to certify what I cannot support, Daniel said, send it in writing after the cars are safe. Right now, I am still working. Victoria stepped closer. Your shop is not large enough to survive every principle you can afford to announce. This principle is the product you hired me to sell. She left without answering. The next test focused on the rear traction bar mounting geometry. The 1966 GT 350 used Shelby-specific suspension changes that placed loads into areas of the Mustang floor pan differently from an ordinary street car. Reproduction brackets existed. Accurate drawings existed. A skilled shop could install them. But the order of assembly left physical consequences. Daniel raised each rear axle on matching stands, keeping the bodies supported at the factory points. He used a tram gauge and laser line to map bracket position relative to original floor pan ribs. Cars 1 and 2 were almost impossibly symmetrical. Their left and right brackets matched within less than a 1/16 of an inch. The weld toes were smooth, continuous, and protected by modern coating applied after the work. Car 3 differed left to right by nearly 3/16. One bracket sat slightly forward. Its weld started over an existing forward seam, paused where the torch angle tightened, then continued from the opposite side. Under the borescope, old coating beneath the bracket had burned away at the weld edge, and later road grime had entered through a microscopic opening. Cole shook his head. Poor placement does not equal original placement. No, Daniel said again, but it matches the way low-volume work was added to a completed shell. You keep collecting things that are not proof. Because no single thing is enough. That is the point. Nora created a line across all 4 columns. Under cars 1 and 2, the assembly and geometry observations matched each other too perfectly. Under car 3, the irregular weld sequence, old layer order, harness path, and bracket placement all told the same untidy story. Then Daniel found the detail that nearly broke his own theory. The left traction bar bracket on car 3 contained a fastener with a modern head marking. Whitaker saw it at the same moment. There, replacement hardware. Cole smiled. Victoria, returning with Monarch's legal and catalog teams behind the curtain, stopped beside the lift. Daniel did not minimize the fastener. He removed no identity-bearing part, but he cleaned the exposed head with solvent and photographed it. The bolt was unquestionably modern. Write it down, he told Nora. She hesitated. Under car 3? Especially under car 3. The modern bolt could mean the bracket was added recently. It could also mean an old bolt had been replaced during repair. Daniel needed to determine whether the surrounding structure had ever been separated. He examined the bracket edge with magnification. The paint around the bolt washer was disturbed, but the welds were not. Old grime remained trapped beneath the bracket lip. The modern bolt passed through an original hole whose edge showed long-term burnishing and oxidation under earlier coatings. Someone had replaced service hardware without replacing the welded mount. To test that explanation, Daniel compared the opposite side. Its older bolt had a worn shank polished in the same direction. The whole geometry matched. The pair had carried load for years. One bolt had simply been renewed. A replaced fastener lowers originality, Daniel said. It does not erase the age of the structure holding it. Whitaker challenged him. Unless someone installed an old bracket and aged the hole, then the bracket and floor would not move as one under load. That gave Daniel the next physical test. He asked Monarch's equipment crew for 4 instrumented wheel pads normally used to demonstrate race car corner weights. He added a small hydraulic loading arm, displacement indicators, and a strict force limit well below what each car experienced during ordinary cornering. The idea was not to bend the cars, it was to apply the same diagonal load to each chassis and watch how the bracket, floor pan, and surrounding seams shared it. Victoria refused at first. "You are not stress testing million-dollar consignments on my auction floor." 650 pounds at the wheel pad, Daniel said. Less than a moderate turn. Tires remain on. No drilling, no scraping, no identity parts touched. Owners can stop the test at any point. Martin Greer refused for car 1. The consignor of car 2 agreed only if Owen approved. Owen looked at the $60,000 deposit agreement, then at Daniel. "Can it damage the car?" "Not if the body is structurally sound. If the indicators show movement above the limit, pressure stops immediately." "And if I say no?" "Then I report what I can support without it. Right now I cannot support the catalog's authenticity claim on car 2. Owen agreed. The owner of car 3, an elderly veterinarian named Margaret Lane, had been quiet through most of the inspection. She had inherited the Mustang from her older brother 27 years earlier and driven it only a few hundred miles. The title error embarrassed her. She had nearly withdrawn the car twice because experts treated the wrong digit as if she had created it. "My brother said it always rode like a farm cart," she told Daniel. "If your machine is gentler than the roads he used, test it." Car 1 remained outside the load test for the moment. Daniel recorded the refusal without drawing a conclusion from it. They rolled car 2 onto the pads first. Daniel placed displacement indicators at the rear bracket, adjacent floor pan rib, and a factory seam forward of the mount. Nora zeroed the digital display. Whitaker verified each sensor position. At 200 pounds of diagonal load, everything moved together. At 400, the bracket face began showing slightly more displacement than the surrounding rib. At 650, the difference reached 19 thousandths of an inch. Still safe, still small. But the motion line appeared at the edge of a hidden reinforcement plate installed beneath the floor. The bracket was not loading the old sheet metal in the way its surface suggested. It was loading a modern plate added during reconstruction. Daniel released the pressure. The body returned to 0. "Excellent workmanship," he said. "Strong, reversible, safe. But the load path belongs to a modern rebuild." Whitaker pointed out that structural repair was permitted in an authentic car. "Yes, if the original modified structure exists beneath or around it," Daniel replied. "Here the plate creates the mount. The borescope shows epoxy under its weld edge. It was built into the restored shell, not repairing an old Shelby installation." Car 3 came next. At 200 pounds, the old bracket and floor rib moved together. At 400, the left and right indicators differed slightly because of the imperfect original placement. At 650, the displacement remained distributed across the welded seam instead of concentrating at a hidden plate. The modern replacement bolt did not move independently. The old hole, bracket, and floor behaved as one aged assembly. Daniel held the load while the borescope entered the cavity. On the monitor, a hair-thin line of old road dust at the bracket edge stayed undisturbed. No fresh crack opened. No concealed plate took over. The same ugly weld that looked careless under static light carried the force through the old floor exactly as its sequence predicted. Nora read the indicators. Bracket to rib differential, 5 thousandths. Stable. Daniel released the pressure. All indicators returned. Margaret Lane placed one hand on the roof of car 3. For the first time that day, she smiled. "Now test car 1, Owen said. Martin Greer objected. He said his expert had already certified it and that Daniel's equipment was an invented standard. Cole backed him. Victoria had the authority to end the process there. Instead, she looked at the 2 monitor traces. One showed a modern hidden reinforcement taking load. The other showed an old modified floor moving as a unit. "The test stays below road load?" she asked Daniel. "By a wide margin." She turned to Martin. "Monarch cannot retain the authenticity statement without equivalent access. You may permit the test, or we withdraw the claim before sale." It was the first time her power moved toward evidence instead of away from it. Martin agreed. Car 1 produced a result similar to car 2, but with an even more rigid hidden plate. The workmanship was exceptional. The The restoration shop had built a precise, strong recreation using laser-cut reinforcement beneath the correct-looking bracket. The structure returned perfectly after load. As a tribute, it was arguably safer and straighter than many surviving originals. As an untouched Shelby conversion, it was not what the catalog promised. Daniel now had 3 layers of physical evidence: assembly sequence, material aging, load path geometry. Every layer separated car 3 from the matching pair. He still needed to explain the wrong title. Victoria wanted the records team to take over. Daniel refused to let paper become a separate investigation. He asked Nora to bring the 3 intake binders already sitting on Monarch's cart. No archives. No calls to distant historians. No new expert arriving with a miraculous letter. The answer, if it existed, had to connect the physical car to the documents already used against it. He started with Car 3's binder. The modern title carried 1 wrong final digit in the Shelby inventory number. An old state transfer from decades earlier repeated it. That was why 2 prior specialists had treated the car as suspect. Behind those titles sat a thin carbon copy of a dealer invoice. The last digit was faint, because the typewriter key had struck through folded paper. Beneath it was a shipping receipt listing the same date, color, and destination, but showing the correct digit more clearly. A handwritten service card from the first owner listed no full Shelby number at all. It listed engine, color, and a delivery date. Those details did not prove the body. They did something more limited and useful. They explained how a clerk could misread 1 digit during the first state transfer, and how the error could then follow the car. Daniel compared the delivery window with date codes on non-removable original sheet metal stampings and components already visible during inspection. They fit the same period. The blue overspray angle inside the cavity matched the stripe direction outside. The old traction bar installation belonged to the same layer history. The record error contradicted one character. The car supported everything around it. Car 2's binder was the reverse. Its title was clean. Its parts carried convincing dates. But 3 major documents had been reproduced on the same modern paper stock, and the body itself showed a recent sequence beneath old components. Daniel did not need to accuse anyone of forgery. The consignor had acquired the binder with the restored car. Genuine parts and copies could accumulate around a tribute without one mastermind creating the whole thing. So the best paperwork belongs to the modern body, Owen said. The most organized paperwork, Daniel corrected. Best is what survives contact with the object. Victoria asked the catalog team to close the online bidding pages for all 3 lots until the inspection ended. The hall's public screens went dark where the Shelby estimates had been. Rumors spread immediately. Buyers gathered outside the curtain. A livestream host began filling time with another car. 2 hours remained before the sale. Victoria could have hidden the problem until after the event. Instead, she decided the proof would be shown. If we change the catalog now, she said, we explain why in the same room where we made the claim. Cole objected. Whitaker asked for 20 minutes to review the images. Daniel welcomed the review, but he would not turn the final demonstration into a panel debate. He designed a 3-car proof line on the auction floor. Each car would pass through the same stations. At the first, overhead grazing light and transparent weld maps would show assembly sequence. At the second, the borescope would show material layers in matched cavity locations. At the third, the wheel pad rig would apply the same controlled diagonal load, while the audience watched bracket and floor displacement on a large screen. Success would not be a price or an expert vote. The authentic candidate had to tell one consistent story across all 3 physical tests. If Car 3's old structure separated, if the hidden layers contradicted its weld sequence, or if another car matched it under equivalent conditions, Daniel's conclusion would fail. Nora helped him position sensors and route cables beneath protective covers. She had logged nearly 300 observations, but the decision remained Daniel's. At one point, she noticed a label transposed between 2 displacement channels. She corrected it before zeroing. Good catch, Daniel said. Would it have changed the result? It could have reversed left and right on the screen. That is enough. Are you nervous? Daniel looked past the curtain at several hundred people waiting for the auction to begin. Yes. You never look nervous. That would be a poor measurement of whether I am. She smiled, then tightened the cable tie. Victoria found Daniel near Car 2. She held a tablet showing the formal end of Dalton Motorworks' inspection agreement, prepared but not yet sent. If this demonstration becomes spectacle without certainty, "I will protect the company," she said. "You should. That may include stating that you exceeded your scope. Then state exactly what I did. I compared the cars without damaging them. You understand your outstanding Monarch schedule disappears if your conclusion is wrong. It may disappear if I am right. Why continue?" Daniel glanced at Nora, who was placing a clean protective cover over the fender of car 3. "Because she is watching what I call work." Victoria followed his gaze. Her expression shifted, not into sympathy but recognition. She had built Monarch while raising a son who was now in graduate school. She understood the private burden of making a public decision in front of the person who would inherit its meaning. "Then make it exact," she said. The curtain opened 30 minutes before the scheduled sale. Victoria walked onto the stage and told the audience Monarch had identified material conflicts in the preliminary descriptions of the 3GT350S. She did not blame consigners. She did not call anyone a fraud. She said the company would show the inspection process before offering any of the cars. The admission cost her control of the story for a moment. Buyers murmured. Phones rose. Owen stood near car 2 with his deposit receipt folded in his jacket pocket. Margaret remained beside car 3. Martin Greer looked as if he wanted the polished floor to open beneath him. Daniel began with car 1. The overhead light revealed its even weld spacing. Nora placed the transparent map over the wheelhouse image on the screen. Then she placed car 2's map beside it. The repeated gap and 4-weld finish aligned. Daniel showed the matching inward-facing harness clips and the same 3 tool marks in the seam sealer. "Two cars can share correct features," he told the audience. "What matters here is that they share the same unusual decisions in the same places. That suggests a common modern reference." Cole stepped forward. "Or a common factory process." Daniel invited him to point to the Ford stamping features that would force the clip orientation. Cole could not, because the clip fit either way. Daniel moved to the scope station. Car 1's gray epoxy appeared on the big screen. The brown aging layer stopped around modern weld heat. Car 2 showed an old bracket installed inside a newer coating sequence. Then Car 3 filled the display with primer, white overspray, blue dust, oxidation, and later cavity wax in an order that followed access, heat, and time. Daniel did not tell the audience to trust the colors. He rotated the probe, changed the light angle, and showed how each layer continued behind edges the restorer could not reach without opening the body. The branching oxidation disappeared beneath later coating and reappeared at the next exposed seam. "Paint can be copied," he said. "Access and sequence are harder to copy. The question is not whether something looks old. The question is whether every layer could only have arrived when the structure says it did." The final station began with car 1 on the wheel pads. Daniel zeroed the sensors in full view. A Monarch technician verified the 650-pound limit. Daniel increased the hydraulic load in 100-pound steps. At 400, the hidden reinforcement began taking a greater share. At 650, the screen displayed the displacement difference in simple colored bars. The modern plate was strong. It was also mechanically distinct from the old floor. Car 2 followed. Halfway to maximum load, one displacement sensor flickered and dropped to 0. Whitaker immediately called the test unreliable. Daniel stopped the pump before touching anything. The load held at 300 pounds. He checked the sensor cable and found a connector that had not fully latched after the car rolled onto the pad. It could have been an innocent movement. It could have become an excuse to continue with bad data. He released all pressure, reseated the connector, re-zeroed every channel, and started car 2 from the beginning. The delay cost 12 minutes. The scheduled auction time passed. Victoria stood on the stage with her arms at her sides and did not hurry him. On the second run, car 2 repeated the earlier private result. The bracket face moved 19 thousandths more than the surrounding rib at maximum load. The screen traced the boundary of the modern reinforcement beneath it. Then car 3 rolled onto the pads. The auction hall became quiet enough for Daniel to hear the hydraulic pump's relief valve breathe between steps. 200 pounds. The old floor and bracket moved together. 400. The left side carried load slightly earlier than the right, matching the crooked placement Daniel had mapped. 600. The modern replacement bolt held inside the old burnished hole without independent movement. At 650, Nora read the measurement into the microphone. 5 thousandths differential. Stable. Daniel held the load and inserted the borescope through the factory plug. The live image showed the same old weld edge carrying strain into the surrounding floor. No concealed plate appeared. No fresh boundary opened. The physical sequence, the aged layers, and the load path agreed. He released the hydraulic pressure. All indicators returned to zero. That return mattered as much as the loaded number. It showed Daniel had revealed the structure without harming it. Car 3 sat on its tires exactly as before, still slightly imperfect, still carrying the wrong digit on its title, and now supported by 3 independent layers of physical behavior. Daniel placed the carbon copy invoice and shipping record on the document camera. He did not call them proof by themselves. He showed the faint final character, the clearer corresponding shipment, and the delivery details consistent with the body they had just tested. "The title contains an error," he said. "The car does not." Nobody applauded immediately. The collectors closest to the stage leaned toward the screens and began asking the kind of specific questions that meant the conclusion had entered serious minds. Where did the epoxy stop? Could the old bracket have been transplanted? Had the load test been repeated? Daniel answered each with an image, a measurement, or a limitation. He never said Car 3 was untouched. It had replacement service hardware, later paint, steering wear, and repairs. He said it was the only one whose base body and Shelby-specific work survived the 3-layer test. Whitaker took the microphone voluntarily. He said his initial opinion on Car 2 had relied too heavily on correct date-coded parts and a coherent file. The physical inspection showed those parts had been assembled around a later body structure. Cole did not endorse Daniel's conclusion, but he withdrew his claim that Car 1's welds represented untouched period work. Victoria stepped to the front of the stage. "Monarch Reserve is correcting all 3 catalog entries," she said. "Car 3 will be described as an authentic 1966 Shelby GT 350 with a documented title discrepancy and disclosed repairs. Cars 1 and 2 will be described as high-quality tribute cars using a combination of period and reproduction components. They will not be offered tonight under the prior estimates." Martin Greer closed his eyes. Margaret Lane gripped the roof of her brother's car. Owen Pritchard unfolded his deposit receipt. "And my $60,000? he asked. "Refunded in full today," Victoria said. "No fee, no delay." Owen nodded. Then he walked to Car 2 and looked at it for a long time. "It is still a beautiful machine," he said. Daniel agreed. "It did not become worse because we named it correctly." That sentence changed what happened to the 2 tribute cars. Instead of being rolled into a back room like contaminated evidence, they remained on display with corrected boards. Car 1's board praised its modern structural precision and concours finish. Car 2's disclosed genuine period components and strong road setup. Their values dropped far below authentic Shelby estimates, but they did not become worthless. Honest descriptions found a different kind of buyer. Margaret chose not to sell Car 3 that night. The sudden change from suspected car to centerpiece was too much to decide under stage lights. Monarch offered secure storage without charge while she considered a later sale. Daniel supported the pause. Authenticity did not create an obligation to turn family history into money before midnight. The auction continued with other lots, after a delay of 58 minutes. Victoria lost a portion of the evening's commissions and absorbed the cost of transporting the 2 corrected cars back to their owners if they chose not to sell. She also lost the easy story in which her original catalog had been right. She gained something less visible and more durable. Buyers stayed. At the end of the night, Owen purchased Car 2 at a transparent tribute car price, after negotiating directly with its owner through Monarch. He said he wanted a car he could drive without guarding every original fastener. The $60,000 deposit had already been returned. The new purchase began clean. Martin took Car 1 home to decide whether to offer it later under the corrected description. He thanked Daniel without warmth but without accusation. Cole left before the final lot. Daniel and Nora remained on the floor packing sensors. The $750 inspection had consumed 13 hours, threatened half his shop's income, and delayed an auction watched around the world. "Was that the worst hourly rate you've ever earned?" Nora asked. "Not even close. You were 7 when you dropped a carburetor spring into a floor drain. You still bring that up because you love me. I bring it up because I bought 3 flashlights and a drain snake." Victoria approached carrying the tablet that had held Daniel's termination notice. She set it face down on the wheel pad. "I was prepared to end your contract before the demonstration," she said. "I know. I was also prepared to describe your conclusion as outside scope. I know that too. You did not make that easy. It wasn't supposed to be easy. It was supposed to be checkable." Victoria looked toward Nora. Your father risked a substantial agreement today. Nora coiled a sensor lead. He risked it when he thought he might be wrong too. That's the part people miss. Daniel glanced at her. It was a better description of integrity than anything he had planned to say. Victoria turned the tablet over. The termination draft was gone. In its place was a proposal for a new inspection program across Monarch's high-value modified cars. Daniel did not accept it immediately. The standard needs 3 things, he said. Physical assembly evidence, material time evidence, and records that agree with the first 2. No car passes on a VIN plate, a rare part, or a famous opinion alone. Inspectors need authority to pause a catalog claim without losing the contract for doing it. You want independent stop authority. I want the word authentic to mean the same thing before and after the buyer pays. Victoria nodded. Write the procedure with my technical team. Your shop will be paid for development time, equipment, and each inspection. And today's hours? All of them, at your emergency diagnostic rate, not $750. The owners should not pay for the catalog correction. Monarch will. The amount was reasonable, not miraculous. It covered Daniel's labor, Nora's logging time, equipment use, and the work his shop had postponed. The longer agreement stabilized the winter schedule and protected the 2 mechanics he had feared laying off. It did not turn Dalton Motorworks into a palace. Daniel preferred it that way. 2 weeks later, the 3-car comparison occupied a new wall in his garage. Not the values, not the owners. Photographs of a harness clip, a seam sealer bead, a buried weld, a layer sequence, and 3 load traces. Beneath them, Nora mounted a small sign for future trainees. No single clue gets to be king. Daniel read it and shook his head. That sounds like a slogan. It is a very accurate slogan. Machines don't care about slogans. Good thing the sign is for people. Margaret Lane brought Car 3 to Dalton Motorworks that afternoon. She had decided to keep it for 1 year and drive it before considering a sale. Daniel corrected the steering play, tuned the choke, and replaced no component that could be safely preserved. Margaret asked Nora to sit in the passenger seat during the first road check, because her brother had always said the car felt happiest with 2 people aboard. Daniel drove. On a quiet industrial road, he let the engine pull through second gear, felt the old body settle against its suspension, and listened for the kind of noise that no document recorded. The GT 350 did not feel perfect. It felt alive, worked on, repaired, and honest about its age. Back at the garage, Margaret ran her hand over the crooked harness tape in the trunk. Every expert before you wanted to clean that up, she said. Daniel closed the trunk gently. Mess is not always history, but history is rarely as neat as a restoration manual. After she left, Nora placed the first installment receipt from Monarch's new inspection program beside Daniel's toolbox. Then, she handed him a fresh intake sheet. Next one arrived while you were out. What is it? 2 identical race engines. Both have the same famous builder's stamp. Owner says one has never been opened. Daniel looked at the wall of evidence, then at the clean inspection sheet. Do the stamps match perfectly? Down to the last scratch. He reached for a magnifying light. Then that is the first thing I don't trust.